Magic, or something so advanced it seems like magic, exists in Game of Thrones: The World of Ice and Fire, despite George really not liking magic. This video, and in the spirit of Spooktober, let's talk about necromancy in The World of Ice and Fire.
Until the mountain drove a lance through this one's heart. I knelt beside his cold body and said the old words. Not because I believed in them, but he was my friend. And he was dead.
Necromancy is the magic of life and death, involving the resurrection of someone that has passed. There are varying levels of consciousness and control of the reanimated individual. Some are still themselves and able to act on their own accord, while others that are res via necromancy simply are slaves to their masters. There is of course a lot of in between. The Others version of necromancy brings back the dead via ice magic, but they are completely under the control of their masters and known as ice wights. They've also brought back horses to ride as ice wights. Ice wights have varying states of decay depending on how long they were dead before being resurrected. They do also retain their memories from their life before, but it's often vague or slowly disappearing. But ice wights aren't always completely mindless machines with little memory. Cold Hands has been resurrected via ice magic, but he has a lot more independence. This could be because he was created not by the others, but the children of the forest, who are on the side of good, quote unquote. Cold Hands' memories are slipping, however. Now, it seems to be a constant thing that if you're resurrected by the side of good, again in quotations, that you have a bit more control over yourself. The Last Kiss is a ritual that followers of R'hllor can perform. It's performed by a priest of R'hllor who breathes fire and flame into the dead individual, cleansing them and bringing them back to life. Depending on how soon the person is resurrected, their memories and personality are altered to various degrees.
It's not getting any easier, you know.
I know. Every time I come back, I'm a bit less. Pieces of you get chipped away.
Berick's memories fade more and more as he's brought back by Thoros. However, he still has more freedom than most ice wights. Now, again, is this because the Lord of Light is a good guy and the others may be bad? Maybe, but it could also be intent. The only examples we have of the Last Kiss are people that brought back someone for love, such as with Beric, or a sense of honor and duty, such as with Lady Stoneheart. Now, Lady Stoneheart is in much more rough shape than Beric, even though Beric has been brought back multiple times because of the time between her resurrection. Instead of shortly after death, like with Beric, Catelyn was dead for 3 days before Beric gave her the last kiss and exchanged his life for hers, passing the flame. When she comes back, she is incredibly disfigured and insanely vengeful, only focusing on killing any who betrayed her and her son Robb. I think her description by a Frey says it all. Her cloak and collar hid the gash his brother's blade had made, but her face was even worse than he remembered. The flesh had gone pudding soft in the water and turned the color of curdled milk. Half her hair was gone, and the rest had turned as white and brittle as a crone's. Beneath her ravaged scalp, her face was shredded skin and black blood where she had raked herself with her nails. But her eyes were the most terrible thing. Her eyes saw him, and they hated. The assumption is, just like Beric was able to pass his flame to Lady Stoneheart, Lady Stoneheart may be able to pass her flame to another person if she chooses to exchange her life. Maybe if she comes across one of her dead children, or maybe a certain bastard she really doesn't like. Now, outside of ice and fire wights, we hear lots of stories of general necromancy, and it never sounds good. In all accounts, it's a terrifying ability that raises the dead as mindless machines to serve its master. While this magic is mostly rumored to be practiced in Essos, Westeros has its fair share of necromancers. But let's focus on Essos first. Asshai seems to be where most necromancers hang out, you know, along with the black alchemists, wizards, warlocks, pyromancers, poisoners, shape-changers, nightwalkers, worshippers of terrible gods, torturers, and so on. Asshai is kind of a free-for-all for naughty, evil stuff because there's no judgment or restrictions. The city of Qohor is another location that's said to have a lot of necromancy going going on. Not surprising, as the city worships the black goat, which demands daily sacrifices. Qohor is also the only place known for the ability to work Valyrian steel, which is said to require the death of babies. So, kind of a city where a lot of dark things are just super okay. Volantis' West Bank also may have had a lot of necromancers, as well as murderers, fornication, drunk people, and pirates. Nefir is the only port of note on the Shivering Sea east of the Bones, sitting at the mouth of the Bleeding Sea and the Cannibal Sands, and you guessed it, also rumored to have a ton of necromancers. Lastly, in Essos, the Bloodstone Emperor was known to be a necromancer and a cannibal. He also killed his sister to become the 9th and last ruler of the Great Empire of Dawn, and caused the Long Night with just all his dark shenanigans. Now let's move to Westeros. Westeros has some well-known necromancers. Qyburn is definitely a necromancer and a pretty skilled one. He created Sir Robert Strong, likely through the blood sacrifices of the women he keeps and tortures in the Black Cells. Dagon Drum was a legendary Ironborn that was alive during the time of the Age of Heroes and said to be a necromancer. We don't have a lot more information on him or what he resurrected, but the Ironborn like him, so he was probably a piece of shit. Morgan Banefort, the last hooded king of House Banefort during the Age of Heroes, was a necromancer and warred with House Lannister for 20 years. He seems to be an example of a necromancer that could also bring himself back in some function. So the story goes that eventually he was killed by the Lannisters, but before he died, he told the king, hey, I'm a necromancer, I'm gonna come back to life, and I'm gonna get my vengeance. Because the King Lannister was so scared of this happening, so scared of him coming back from the grave with his necromancy powers, he cut the man up into pieces and fed him to his lions. However, the lions broke free 2 years later and devoured 3 of the king's sons. Was this truly Banefort coming back? I don't know, it's hard to say. If you keep pet lions, chances are eventually something really bad's gonna happen. So can necromancers bring themselves back after they die if they did some ritual or spell before their death? Debatable. You can let me know in the comment section down below if you think it's possible. Clarence was a legendary hero of House Crab of Crackclaw Point. His seat was called the Whispers because he brought back the heads of his enemies and had his witch wife raise them back from the dead. He had her do this so that they could give him counsel, but they could only speak in whispers. Lastly, there are rumors that the Hightowers practiced necromancy, and I 100% believe this without proof. I mean, look at these degenerates.
Think of the shame on your wife, on me. How can you keep carrying on like this, especially on a day like today?
So as we continue Spooktober, I'll be covering more dark, disturbing, and magical things in Game of Thrones, The World of Ice and Fire.